What is up, guys? Shaq Maverick here, and welcome to the Talks Near Me podcast, the show where we share our advice to audiences that could use talk therapy to improve mental health. And we also uncover your popular media franchises and our favorite popular culture content. Now, today's episode will be uncovering about the world pandemic of this spring. Everyone fears with the corona. Yeah, what's going on with that? So what's the issue with just, we're at this point to just where it's like the issue of people just staying home and panic buying all sorts of provisions and supplies, right? Other than obviously running out of money as the consumer for you and your family, like you would be depleting all of your stock resources and, and savings or your savings, whichever. And all of that just because of this global, supposed pandemic that the media had helped contribute heavily on, with this viral infection. Like they say it's an outbreak. I'm like, oh, you look at the numbers, is it really? That right there, it's not even debatable that this thing is, I wouldn't even consider an outbreak. But hey, people really want to make this more than what it really is. I wouldn't consider an outbreak. Now, what will have to happen to all of these like missed days, weeks, or maybe even months if they continue to extend these things? And a lot of things are gonna have to try and catch up on, like literally impossible. Like, I know for the government, they're in the business of accumulating capital flow for the country's economy and regulating policies to protect consumer rights and, from risk and liabilities and stuff like that, boring stuff. Anyway, and then you have like many private companies that operates their businesses depending on the effect of its industry. And right now, we're in this effect, known to be a whole global pandemic. Now, it was just even stated from the World Health Organization, which I just can't believe. We're in this new reality. Like let's recap about this whole pandemic. Like I think it was around December, people was already catching a whiff of this potentially spreading on a larger scale. What was happening in Wuhan, China, you had medias and everything was looking into it a little bit here and there. But not a lot of people really heard much of the outcome until reports start to come in. Then reports was placed in, and a lot of the Western media kind of just, it caught its attention on what was going on. So for some of the medias, they start diverting their attention in this kind of thing during January when the numbers started racking up. Emphasis on racking up. And then you had World Health Organization, that had this viral infection submitted to them. And it was like in a status of like nothing severe to worry about, despite the several, I would say about hundreds of people, passing. Then February hit, the numbers like considerably climbed to like about several thousands, which is just insane. And then people started to really divert attention on it. I guess, I don't know how it was initiated for the media, but someone must have had to say like, this is like a pandemic or some sort of outbreak of a virus that, people never really look to. It's like, oh, shoot, it's in China. It's so horrible. People are dying, everything like that. And then it just kind of just started, I don't know, people just started to like really invest it in uncovering that kind of media, heavily, where people just started to look out for it, which is just insane. And then people talk about it as if it's some sort of like pandemic. Like, we've had many global pandemics, what's been going on for like the past several hundreds to thousands of years throughout our humanity. Several hundreds to thousands of years we've had global pandemics, like actual legit, like life-threatening stuff on a more higher scale. Even though despite up to current, they state that the coronavirus itself is like at a, what was it, 4.0 or 4.3 or something like that, mortality rate, which is just insane. That's actually a lot more heavily, that's what I'm looking for. That's more heavily severe than influenza or the flu itself. But let's run back to those seven, right? So you had the let's go to something just a little bit within the next say 800 years. You had the Black Death that wiped out more than half of Europe, leaving a large-scale devastation in its wake. It's caused by a strain of this bacterium. And not a lot of people really talk about, bacteria itself. Because bacterium is like a piece of bacteria. So yeah, not a lot of people really talk about how that kind of thing could infect like a mass scale. When it comes to bacteria, them things can multiply indefinitely, like instantaneously, once it's near some sort of germs that it itself can just battle with, that kind of thing, you know. We like it's been like we've been having studies like that for history for a very long time, that we've come across in finding a lot of like cures for these kind of things, like legit cures, more than just treatments, like even something like antibiotics that can completely like disinfect or like just simply get rid of like a lot of bacteria to its core bacterium. So when this bacterium and thing just hit, you know, it was from in fleas that had infected mammals. You know, you had like rodents, rats, raccoons, you name it, you know, and they had a name too. It was the Yersinia pestis. So that's the name of the bacterium. You know, it's caused massive burials, but no worry for it like now because it's long since extinct. Um, it's changed the course of European history since so many people died. You know, labor was so hard to come by, but the ironic thing is it provided opportunities with much better wages for workers, and it helped ended Europe's system of serfdom. I don't feel like getting into that detail right now. Look it up. Europe's system of serfdom. Then you have the coca lights. What's it? What was it called? Coca Lightsley. I think it's called Coca Lightsley. It's something Aztec, some sort of word. I don't know. But it was a Coca Lightsley epidemic that was back in 1545 to 1548. You know, so this viral infection fever killed more than 15 million people in Mexico and Central America. And the population, I call it the pop for short, you know, that's the majority. Majority of them, or the pop, were already weak with little to no access to water for them to stay hydrated. And it proved to be a severe calamity, you know, so specialists had to examine the skeletons of victims to find that infected, that, you know, suffered from that hardcore fever. You know, it was some sort of like subspecies. You might have heard the word thrown around here and there. So salmonella, what? Salmonella. You know, you might have heard that word here and there before growing up. I don't know, or even in your days, if you're like old or middle age or something. I still say you're old. It's called, and it like the subspecies itself was also called something like a S paratyphi or C, something like that. But the fever caused high fever. It caused severe dehydration, and had a lot of gastrointestinal problems, which is a major health threat in today's time. And right now, today's time, you worrying about the corona, this kind of thing could still really affect you. And to dumb it down, what all that meant was that if you catch this thing, you will want to be somewhere where there's plenty of water and only eat like what's caused you too much. You don't want to eat that's causing you too much of a stomach digestion. You know, that's greasy food. You don't want that. Mayonnaise, you wouldn't want that. Having this sucker. Chicken, beef, steak. Yeah, like so much that will affect your glands and your stomach itself that you would be in some. You really don't want that. You really do not want that. You know, you had American plagues, you know. I think 16th century, they had like a Eurasian disease by European explorers back then in the 16th century. That was literally like the 1500s during the age of discovery, you know. So for something like that, you look like you had chicken pox with this one, you see. And that was during around that time. Now, for a lot of Americans, you know, what would you think would have been the most devastating weapon in history during that age of discovery? Now, hold it right there. Don't you fucking turn my program off and act confused, not knowing what I'm saying. It's a rhetorical question you and anyone else has already know. You didn't even need to go to school for it. Like age of discovery, almost 500 years since, and our great-great-grand like parents got to experience the aftermath of all of it and beyond that. You know this. It used to be a holiday not too long ago. People renamed it to Indigenous Peoples Day. And there's a whole history to that. A lot of people should be aware of. And no, not everyone actually changed the entire holiday of it, just some places and some states. But the matter of those events was during those times that people back in the day was being slaughtered, and they were converted into newly developing cultures that uphold in today's society. The way how they handle it should be obvious, but not a lot of you could take enough guess to figure that out. Like those Aztec and Incan people were utterly massacred with not enough rifles and ammunitions, but the disease. They say around 90% of the pop was wiped out with the Spanish forces. Did they realize what they were doing? I leave that for you with your own due diligence to figure that out. But with that weapon they used to slaughter those people out of like a 90% population, that right there was a lot more effective than how we have guns now these days. So really, when people should be asking the question, hey, do guns kill people? And I'm not trying to make it this kind of topic, but I'm just saying you should really look at it from a different perspective and say people pretty much do kill people. And they use that whole bacteria of a disease to wipe out like the masses of like a lot of those Indian people, which is or Aboriginal people or whatever, the natives and stuff in the Western Hemisphere. They did that a lot in the Caribbean, and definitely way more in the Americas, which was just insane. And then you have many other diseases as well. You had the Philadelphia yellow fever epidemic that was in 1793. Okay, it's something a little bit 300 years from before. You know, in that time, people assume African Americans were recruited to like nurse the sick. Come to find out, this killed more than 5,000 people, and it was started by mosquitoes in the hot and humid summer weather. This kind of thing still does happen. It may be rare. I guess it depends because people can get a lot of like vaccines and stuff. Because when it comes to this thing like the fever and one thing that I was telling you about before with the the American plagues and stuff, that right there has itself as a virus because these are types of fevers, or they call influenza. It has a lot. So during these hot and humid time of the summers, we may be, less likely to be affected by the coronavirus, but we still have other diseases to worry about, other viral infections, like that kind of thing, for instance, with a mosquito that could infect us and cause us to get those severe flu, like the flu pandemic back in 1889 to 1890. This is less than literally 100, like almost 200 years ago. I'd say it's about 150 at most, or 100 and, yeah, I'd say like it's about 100 and, yeah, around that, 150. But we'll go more on that discussion in just about a minute. So we're going to cut into our break and then we will resume. Yeah, we'll resume. I'm just getting started and talking about this whole thing. So like it's going to be a little bit of a brief series on how we'll be putting it into segments and parts for a lot of people to be listening and understanding what's going on. There's a lot to consider with this whole viral infection, and we will make it through these times because we have, throughout history, we have dominated at the very end when it came to a lot of situation and instances like these. Like, I'm confident that we will be pulling through on this, and there's a lot more to worry about after in the aftermath of this whole thing. Like, things will get back to normal. But yeah, like we'll just cut into a break and we'll talk more about it and on what we can do about the solutions and how it'll benefit your mental health about what's going on. So this is the Talks Near Me show. I'm Shaq Maverick, and this is where we uncover talk therapy that helps people improve mental health. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with more of our content.